Welcome everyone to the another episode. Today we have a Dr. Gina Simmons Schneider, all the way from US. So she is a psychotherapist, executive coach, corporate trainer, and the author of the award-winning book, Frazzle Brain. So break free from anxiety, anger, and stress using advanced discoveries in neuropsychology, Central Recovery Press, April 2022. So she is also a coping skill expert with over 25 years of experience helping people managing big but scary emotions and conflicts. So Dr. Schneider blogs for Psychology Today and writes the award-winning Manage Anger Daily blogs. So she has also blogged for Forbes and Women in Crime Inc., which is the Wall Street Journal named a blog worth reading. Her pieces have appeared in several publications, including Women's World, Psychology Today, Marie Claire, Cosmopolitan, Mind Body Green, and Stylish Magazine. So, in this episode, we're going to learn more about Gina Simon's work. And also, we're going to touch base in coping with anxiety, anger, the stress we have in a day to day basis, and how we can manage that in a better way. So, without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Gina to the show. So, Dr. Gina, welcome to the show, and how are you doing today?
Thank you. I know. I appreciate it. I am doing well. Thank you for asking. It's the beginning of my day, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners in the UK are, ending, I guess,
Yeah.
their workday.
Yeah, majority of my listeners from like a US and Canada. So I think like less than 10% UK listeners I have. So it's very
Oh, okay.
interesting audience I have. So yeah, majority of will be like people from your end. So yeah, it's exciting. And I thank you so much for coming to the show and giving your valuable time to our listeners and me. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And yeah, you're working on different aspect in your career right now. You're an author, you are and psychotherapist, you're running a business coaching as well. So walk us through like where is all journey began, like a beginning of your career. Is there something you knew you're going to be doing, or is accidentally like you fell in love with psychology and everything like that?
Well, a lot of it really evolved out of need, right? And I think a lot of times we start our career out of necessity. It's like, I need to get a job. I need to be making a living. I started out abandoned, having to support myself as a teenager,
Yeah.
similar to you, although my parents didn't pass away. But it's a similar journey. And so you try a number of different things based on your talents and interests and who's in your environment. So a lot
Mm.
of what shapes us, I think, is the environment we're plopped into, but also the environment we're seeking, right? So one of the things that I think I had that was helpful is curiosity and a love of learning.
Yeah.
And even though I came from uneducated parents and I came from a community that wasn't really highly educated at that time, I sought out educated people and I sought out learning for myself. And that was all driven by curiosity.
Right.
So then what happened is I ended up working in a recreation center after working on a hotline for suicide prevention. And so I worked for a community service agency that tried to help young people who were struggling, first offenders, children who were juvenile delinquents,
Mm.
um, a lot of children who'd had really rough and rugged beginnings. And I found that so rewarding. And so for many years, I worked with kids who were in that passionate stage of life where they're just angry and explosive and but willing to try and try new things. And
Yeah.
I found that really, really rewarding. So then from there, I ended up being part of, there were some workplace shootings happening. A lot of workplace violence was occurring.
Right.
And I was part of a team of people who would try to debrief people after the fact and help them be able to manage their anxiety and get back to work again and normalize their lives again. And after doing that work, it became very apparent that prevention work was needed more. And I wanted to be more on the prevention side than going out after the fact, after some catastrophe. So what I ended up doing is we developed some anger management programs and conflict resolution work. So that's how I got into coaching executives on managing difficult employees, managing threats in the workplace, managing effectively how to treat people in such a way that you're lowering the risks of someone acting out in anger.
Mm,
So I really did a deep dive looking at what causes anger, and a lot of times it comes from trauma,
right.
right? It's that saying,
Yeah.
hurt people, right? So a lot of times folks are traumatized, and when they're being treated in a way that triggers that trauma, that tends to evoke certain reactions. So so teaching people how to cope, how to manage and soothe themselves, how to lower their own anxiety and stress, became a real passion of mine. So then I got very interested in neuropsychology research,
Mm,
and I learned lovely little gems like I have this little thing I call a Frazzle Brain. It's a little
yeah.
stress ball. You can use a tennis ball or a squishy ball, a child's ball. But if you hold this on your left hand for about 15 seconds and you squeeze it, studies show that it improves your performance. If you have to give a speech,
Yeah.
if you have to do something that you're a little nervous about, talk to your boss, something like that, talk to a new client, just something simple like that, because it activates the right brain. If you use it with your left hand, it activates the right brain, which has a sort of calming effect on our nervous system. And it's a
Right.
mild effect. It's a mild effect, but it has real effects in the real world, right? So
Okay.
simple things like that really make a difference in how people manage anxiety. And so I got so excited about that drove me to write the book Frazzle Brain too.
Mm,
And I wanted to give people tools, because so many of the books that I've recommended to my clients for anxiety,
yeah.
you have to get to chapter 5 before you get any tools. And the first few chapters are checklists of anxiety symptoms that make people feel anxious just reading it.
Right.
and, and so I decided that a book was needed that actually calmed you when you read it.
Mm,
It addressed the real issues, it addressed trauma, it addresses the hard things, but it has these little calming exercises all the way through, so that you get a little taste of what it feels like to actually lower your own nervous system arousal. And so there's a lot of research on how that really lowering our nervous system arousal frees up our brain, our cognitive reserves,
yeah.
so that we're better problem solvers, and we can be creative, and we can create businesses, and we can do all the things and enjoy our lives a lot more.
Yeah. That's great. So, with your experience, like you have worked with a tremendous amount of people and the study you have done, so where does the main problem start from? Like we can touch base on the anger at the beginning, like we can go stress and anxiety later on, because I think like we never mentioned that much about anger in my podcast. Because what I realize when is someone angry about someone or something, they always can do with certain people or certain condition. For an example, like when someone is angry about something, they're not going to be angry at the boss. Probably they come home and with their wife or partner or their children rather than the boss, because they know like the what consequences they're going to have. Probably they're going to get fired from the job or like something bad going to happen. But when it's doing it with the partner or the children, like there is a little argument and they know like they're going to get away with it. So do you believe that is in our mind, or like people say like, oh, I cannot control my anger because it's a genetic, or they have a choice to do that?
I think you brought up many issues, right? There's the power dynamic of where is it safe for us to express our anger, and oftentimes people will express their anger towards people who have less power,
Yeah.
to less power to fight back, less power to hurt you. I remember going to a concert with my husband and my two sons. We went to a musical concert, and my one son and myself are very short. We're small people. And my husband and my other son are very tall. They're 6 feet and above 6 feet.
Right.
So, so a drunk gentleman let my two tall, big people walk by, walk in front of him, and then shoved the two little people, myself and my son, out of the way. So it's like, you get out of my way. You're tiny. I can get you out of my way. But the
Right.
big people we're gonna leave alone because I have a survival instinct, and I
Yeah.
don't want to, get hurt. So I think that is a sort of primitive animal part of our brain
Mm.
that we want to survive, and those of us who still have our sanity intact, we will let out our anger on those people we feel are less powerful. And that can be really harmful because you end up hurting the people
Yeah.
you love, right? And the people maybe who would nurture you if you were nicer, if you weren't so mean. So part of my work in couples therapy is really helping people to manage their own anger rather than lashing out and acting out with their anger.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the nature versus nurture kind of question
Mm.
is this are we born angry, or are we uh are we taught it in our environment? Does it stem from trauma?
Yeah.
Is it learned? And I would say yes to all of those things. Yes, it's our environment, it's learned, but it's also a part of our primitive animal brain. Like, we can see toddlers when they're mad, they bite, they
Mm.
growl, scratch, they scream, and they act very much like, growling wild animals, because that's really what humans are.
Yeah.
And then we learn from our environment. We learn coping skills. We learn things like manners. We learn, hopefully we learn some self-control, like, I have to wait to get what I want.
Yeah.
I have to wait, I have to take my turn. I have to consider the needs of others, right? So typically a child pre two, they don't have any empathy really, or much shame or anything. But 3 to 5, you'll see a child start to show caring for another child that's crying. They might go over and kiss the boo boo on their knee, and want to make the child feel better because they
Mm.
start to show caring for another.
Yeah.
So what happens when we become adults is we have all these experiences, and some of them are traumatic, some of them are painful, some of them have been life threatening, right? And so certain triggers might trigger somebody in the workplace to feel really threatened when the person who triggered them is interpreting it from a totally different perspective. And so
Right.
that's a lot of what we find. And so to calm ourselves or to manage anger better, we don't want to eliminate anger because it's really an important part of our survival. We need to know something's wrong, something is threatening me, something doesn't feel right. Um, this feels harmful. We need to have that emotion because it protects us.
Yeah.
At the same time, we need to manage that emotion effectively so that we aren't um, punching our boss in the face and getting fired
Mm.
and getting sent to jail and having to hire an attorney, and all
Yeah.
the negative consequences of acting out our anger in destructive ways. So we have two ways of doing this that I recommend: from the body up or the bottom up. So, and starting with care for our body, and then from the top down, from our thoughts and the way that we think about the situation that we're in, from the top down, from our brain, our
Right.
logic, our reasoning down. So if someone is coming to us with anger management issues, I always ask them about sleep, diet, and exercise, right? The fundamentals.
Yeah.
Are you exercising? Uh, Ideally every day. if you've got an anger problem, you probably have anxiety. And if you have anxiety, the best way to feel better is to move your body every day. Because what we know, if we're using our muscles every day, it's the only way we release myokines, which are a hormone like chemical
Mm,
that are only released because of using our muscles. And they're called the hope chemicals because they make us feel hopeful. They,
right.
if you have a regular exercise practice, you immediately feel it afterwards. Like everything that felt terrible and unmanageable now feels a little bit more manageable. Like I feel better in my body. I feel like
Yeah.
I can handle
Is that the
it, right?
hormones the which creates
It
the
is
whole?
like a hormone. It's
Okay.
been called like a hormone by Dr. Lyon. She's done a lot of research
Right.
on this very thing, and this is pretty new, cutting edge
Yeah,
research
that's why I never
on.
heard of it. Like I did a law study on anxiety, but I never heard of it. That's why I'm just asking. Like if it was a hormone, I would have known. Yeah.
But it's like it works like a hormone in that
Okay.
it affects our whole system, and our muscles are the only way we can get
Yeah.
those myokines and hope
Right.
chemicals. So that's sort of a fundamental bottom up thing that we can do to lower anxiety is
Mm,
have a regular practice of exercise, and it can be easy exercise. It doesn't have to be, pumping iron,
yeah.
or becoming a bodybuilder or anything intense like that. And we also know that an interesting survey in the US that really shocked me is only 10% of the population of the US gets the 5 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day that are recommended for our health.
Hmm.
Only 10%. So we have an epidemic of anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
And there's research that shows that anxiety, stress, depression, and anger are often related to a lack of fruits and vegetables in the diet. So 5 to 9 servings is about 2.5 cups of fruits or vegetables, 2.5 cups.
Yeah.
Um, not that much. It's just if you're getting some at every meal, it's pretty doable if you're consciously
Yeah.
thinking about it.
And
But
just
you're then
changing
you're
it like a
getting
healthy snacks, isn't it? Like a one apple and just a one banana that just like a serves a lot of purpose, isn't it? And then add some vegetable with your main meals.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
not that hard if you're intentionally doing it. But many of us are living in places where we don't have access to it, so
Yeah.
that's something to really try to do. But it does really start with the body, because if you're fighting overwhelming rushes of anxiety, panic, and those sorts of things, the physicality of it has to have its arc. It has to kind of work its way through your body, and it takes a while, right?
Yeah.
So if you can start with some fundamental things, getting regular sleep, exercise will help you with your sleep. Having a nutritious diet will help you with your sleep. The other thing I notice with people with anger and anxiety issues is they are very self-neglectful. They
Mm,
will skip meals. They'll forget to eat. They will uh, have erratic sleep wake cycles. They'll ignore physical symptoms like pain, like things that are going on in their body, and just kind of ignore it and focus so much outside of their body and not do self-care.
right.
And what that does is it lowers your ability to regulate yourself because you're not in touch with yourself. You're not aware. You're not self-aware. So that's why after one of the things we teach are mindfulness techniques too, to just be present in the moment and aware of your own body so that you can make minor little corrections that can prevent injury, can prevent you from getting sick, or can help you stay sort of fundamentally healthier. And what that does is it gives you a buffer. It gives you a little bit of um, resilience and a little more patience, a little more room for patience because you're not feeling so uncomfortable in your own
Yeah.
body.
And do you think like the both are connected, the anger and the anxiety?
Yes, There is always, with people with anger, there's always an underlying anxiety. It's
Right.
just always there. So sometimes you will see people with who are really kind and nice. People with anxiety are often just creative, sensitive, kind, good people, often brilliant. And what you see sometimes is suppression of anger, right? So if
Yeah.
somebody presents with anxiety, they're pushing down any anger, and then it can leak out. It can leak out in kicking the dog, or leak out in slamming the door, or it leaks out
Mm.
in certain areas. So in people who present with an anxiety disorder, they have panic attacks, there's always underlying anger. There's always underlying um, uh, real resentment, you
Right.
know, that's just like simmering and stewing inside. Um, and then with people who present with anger, who are more explosive, and you see
Yeah.
more of this, yelling at you and cursing, and that kind of behavior, there's always underlying anxiety.
Yeah.
It's like fear. It's fear. It's uh, not feeling safe. Not feeling safe, right? So they're sort of two sides of the same coin. I sort of
Yeah.
I describe it as sort of like Janus, the god that sort of war and conflict, and it's a two-faced god. On the one
Mm.
side it's um, angry, and the other side is anxiety, and they're sort of two sides of the same coin. And any given individual can present with anger and have underlying anxiety, or present with anxiety and have underlying anger. So the way through it is really to be able to calm and soothe the body's nervous system. And there are tools like mindfulness. Mindfulness is described as paying attention to the present moment, the
Right.
moment you're in, on purpose. You're saying, I'm paying attention to right now. It's just Ainul and I talking right now. This is what's happening. And doing that without judgment. And judgment is the running thoughts. This is boring. This is interesting. This is fun. My back itches. This is,
Yeah.
all of the running thoughts are sort of taking us away from awareness of the present moment that we're in. And so, with folks with anxiety and anger problems, you will see, oop, it looks like we froze for a second.
Yeah.
Um, but people with anxiety and anger symptoms, often you will see this sort of uh, difficulty in calming down the nervous system, and so the nervous system is sort of running the show,
Mm.
and driving the behavior, but it also drives what we're actually seeing,
Yeah.
right? So if I'm angry, I'm noticing the things that irritate me. I'm not noticing the kindnesses. I'm not noticing the things that are working really well. I'm not paying attention to the parts of my body that feel good. I'm only paying attention to the things that feel bad.
Yeah.
So we teach some mindfulness strategies to just,
So
as a
what will be
side
like
effect.
a steps like you can follow? I know like we just talked about a lot of things, but someone comes to
Mhm.
you looking for the help. Like if you want to give like a step by step guidance, like an exercise, meditation, mindfulness you just mentioned, like what will be like a realistic approach for them they can start off and work on the both problem they have?
Great question. I start with where people are and what their most prominent symptoms are, right? And what
Yeah.
their most pressing motivations are. So, but I always ask about the fundamentals. Are you sleeping? Are you eating?
Mm.
Are you exercising? And the reason why is those are fundamentals that will strengthen your ability to have resilience to the stresses of life. So I always ask that first. Those are fundamental, because if you're hungry, you're not going to have much reserve. And
Yeah.
a lot of times people with anxiety and anger, they skip meals. They aren't aware that they're hungry. And then our brain interprets hunger as, uh-oh, something's wrong. And sometimes with anxiety, you lose your appetite and you don't realize you're hungry. And you're acting with this drive of something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong, right? So I always start with that. And then I ask about any soothing or calming strategies that they have. What do they do for stress reduction? And surprise, surprise, many people with anxiety and stress do nothing at all to reduce their stress.
Yeah.
Or they say things like, I play video games, you know,
Right.
World of Warcraft, and, I'm fighting the enemy every day with my game, and that makes me feel like I'm relaxing. You're not relaxing. You're not relaxing. You're living a little mini combat, you know.
Yeah.
That is actually not relaxing your body. You might enjoy it more than going to work or other things you might do, but watching television is not relaxation. It puts your brain into a hypnotic state. And every television show, whether you're watching children's cartoons or whatever, has conflict in it or it's boring.
Mm.
Everybody's fighting, somebody's got some suspenseful issue that keeps you focused. So your brain is experiencing a little mini trauma every time, the
Yeah.
bad guy gets shot or the good guy gets shot, or, all of those things. So that isn't actually real relaxation. So typically, a lot of people that come for anxiety and anger stress, we talk about what real relaxation is. And real relaxation would be dealing with living things, not dead things.
Right.
So taking your dog for a walk, um, going swimming in a lake, or walking by a beach, or walking in a forest, walking through a park, paying attention to a tree, um, putting your feet up and reading poetry, um, slowing down, slowing down. Um, and so dealing with living things is better than dealing than interacting a lot with dead things like our computers and our phones and our all of those things,
Mm.
because life living things get us in touch with life and our own vitality.
Yeah.
So we need a balance of that, and we're very off balance now. The world is very, very off balance in terms of our connection to living things. So, having taken care of plants, we do know that dealing with loamy soil, the rich loamy soil, if you inhale that, that has particulates that are very calming. So, having a little
Mm.
gardening habit. Gardening is a slow thing, right? You
Yeah.
plant seeds, they don't just go sprout up the next day. You kind of have to water them and slow down. And but we know inhaling the particulates of really good, rich, loamy soil real has natural antidepressant and anti-anxiety effects. So little things like that. If you have house plants,
Yeah.
planting some plants, um, having little mini gardens, having a garden wall. So there are many little things. I start with where people are and what their interests are, and then I try to build on that. And we build a practice of every day you're doing some calming, stress relieving
Mm.
activity. We do know things like yoga nidra is very helpful and healing, and a lot of hospitals are using that to help people recover from cancer surgeries and other types of serious medical illnesses. That these calming practices lower inflammation and help the body heal faster from any kind of illness or
Yeah.
inflammatory disease, or even from surgery. So that's why a lot of these mindfulness practices are being used in hospitals, because there's really strong evidence of its healing effects. So self-calming is really, really important. I look at television and video games as entertainment, and
Yeah.
entertainment is more on the fun side, which is fun is also good. However, fun where you're moving your body is better,
Yeah.
right? So if you're out with your child playing catch with the ball, or going bowling, or playing badminton, or croquet, or, doing some activity that's a little more physical is usually much more rewarding. You usually um, feel much more relaxed after doing an activity like that than if you're, spending hours playing video games.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing the steps because a lot of people as a newbie they get lost like where to start like shall I just do meditation or eat healthy or like do activities. So thank you for like a guidance so people can take in easily and then if they need a further help they obviously can reach out to you. So Dr. Gina, we nearly coming to the end of this podcast. So before we wrap up, if anyone wants to learn more about yourself, your business, or they want to grab a copy of your book, where's the best place to find you?
Well, you can find my book anywhere books are sold, Amazon, but you can find me. I'd love to hear from any listeners' questions. I always get back to people. And you can find me at frazzlebrain.com. So that's Frazzle, Frazzle, brain, BRAIN.com, frazzlebrain.com, one word. And I always respond to people. You can also find me on Psychology Today. I have a blog, and you can get free information that helps with mental health issues. I write about a lot of different mental health issues, and I think people might uh, find value in those articles.
Yeah, that'll be great. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you very best of luck with everything you do. And thank you for your valuable time today.
Thank you. I know you too.
Yeah, you're my very pleasure. So that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode with Dr. Gina Simmons Schneider. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. If anyone wants to learn more about her, you can visit our website, our blog, and also you can grab a copy of her book from Amazon. So I'm going to put all the links on the description for you to find it. So until then, talk to you in the next episode. Take care.